Loving Sai Ram and greetings once again from Prashanti Nilayam. I am sorry I have not been able to speak to you for quite some time. Part of this has been due to preoccupation with various matters relating to improving our radio broadcasting service, particularly via the internet. Also, we have had to put in a lot of effort to bring out our new radio magazine Heart to Heart, which I trust you have been seeing regularly. Just in case you have missed, please log on to our website, and I hope you know what our website address is. When you log on to our website, on the home page, you will find a reference to our magazine. Click on that and you would instantly be able to browse through our fortnightly journal. We are rather proud of this journal, if I may say so, particularly because it appears to be bringing joy to lots of people all over the world. May I, at this point, request you, please tell your friends about this magazine feature of ours, in case they are not already aware of it. Today, I wish to speak about some issues relating to education. The provocation for this is the just concluded seminar of Vice-Chacellors on value education and ethics. Let me start by giving the background to this seminar. This year, 2003, is the Golden Jubilee year of the University Grants Commission of India, the apex body that not only provides some funding to our universities, but also grants recognition, plays the role of a watchdog, etc. By the way, it was the UGC, as it is always referred to, that granted the formal recognition to Swami's Institute as a deemed university, and this happened way back in 1981. At that time, a review committee was appointed by the UGC to examine our request for university status. And that committee, after visiting this place, expressed the hope that in due course of time, this university would become the pace setter in blending modern education with traditional values and culture. That, of course, has happened in abundant measure. So much so, in 1996, a special committee of the Indian Parliament that was connected with education paid a visit here to study our methods. I remember the visit of this committee very well, since I was the Vice-Chancellor at that time, and I had to face a 2-hour grilling by about 20-odd members of Parliament who constituted the committee. Later, when the committee wrote its report and submitted it to the Indian Parliament, it strongly endorsed the integral system of education adopted in our institute and made the specific recommendation that all education in India must be rooted in the basic human values so familiar and dear to us, namely Sathya, Dharma, Shanti, Prema, and Ahimsa. The story does not end here. Sometime later, after reading the report of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, the director of NCERT, which means National Council for Educational Research and Training, this director of NCERT paid a visit to Prashanti Nilayam to see what the Sathya Sai system of education was all about. He was deeply impressed by what he saw and decided to give shape to the Parliament Committee's recommendation by drawing up a formal scheme of education based on Sathya, Dharma and all that. Unfortunately, this immediately stirred up trouble. Some misguided people took this to be an attempt to impose Hindu religion on students without consideration for their particular faith. You and I know this to be stupid, but alas, the world is full of stupid people. And so, this man, or misguided man, I should perhaps say, promptly went to court, citing NCERT as the respondent. The battle between the two wound its way through the various lower courts and finally ended up in the Supreme Court, where, after much deliberation, the justices upheld the viewpoint of NCERT. In their judgment, the judges not only quoted extensively from the report of the Parliament Committee that I have already referred to, but also emphatically declared that without fundamental values, humanity would be dead. Therefore, it was the duty of the state to ensure that its future citizens are taught values in schools and colleges, and that this was a part of the duty of teachers. To all of us, this might seem pretty obvious, but in this day and age when people are busy screaming about rights all the time, values and responsibilities have almost been driven out of the radar screen, as they say. Okay, let me now come to the seminar that I started with. In November 2002, the UGC launched with much fanfare the year of its Golden Jubilee and decided to hold about half a dozen conferences and seminars all over the country, dealing with many topics related to university education. One of this was to be a seminar on value education. Meanwhile, an accreditation committee visited the institute somewhere in December 2002, I think. This committee called NAAC, N-A-A-C, which stands for National Assessment and Accreditation Committee. This committee, NAAC, goes around the country visiting various universities and ranking them according to what they see as the performance. When NAAC came here and spent 3 days looking at every nook and corner, it realized that this institute was something absolutely unique, and it said so in its report to the UGC. In fact, it described the institute as the crown jewel of the Indian educational system. That, you must admit, is high praise, coming from a body that is quite impartial and in fact knew very little about our institute before it came here. The chairman of the UGC saw this report and decided that maybe Prashanthi Nilayam could be the venue for the Golden Jubilee seminar on value education. Thus it was that the seminar came to be held here from 28th to 30th October 2003. The seminar turned out to be a grand affair. No surprise in that, because in such matters, Swami spares no effort in playing the most gracious and perfect host. Elaborate arrangements were made to receive and accommodate the guests, and the visitors were totally charmed. So, what actually happened during the seminar and what's going to happen as a result of the deliberations conducted here? That is what I shall now turn to. I will not give a blow-by-blow account of the inauguration proceedings, etc., because they have all been covered adequately as a part of a regular radio documentary. I shall deal instead with some of the broader issues. It was said of Julius Caesar, he came, he saw, and he conquered. Using similar language, I might say in this case, they came, they saw, and they were stunned. That, of course, was to be expected. During the deliberations, there were many speeches and also many doubts. The big issue was, all this is fine. The Sathya Sai Institute has done a tremendous job, no doubt about that. But can it be done elsewhere? Can it be replicated? That is the question I now wish to address. Let us look at the background to the educational scene in India, and I would like to start way back around 1935 or so. At that time, Puttaparthi was a hamlet with a population of about 100 people or so. There was no direct road to this place. There was, however, a road, though a bad one, up to Karnataka Nagepalli, a village on the other side of the Chitravati river. One came up to Karnataka Nagepalli, and it was, of course, an arduous journey even to do that. And after that, one crossed the river on foot, or else one could walk across fields all the way from Bukkapatnam, a distance of 6 to 7 kilometers. Now, what on earth has all this got to do with value education? I am coming precisely to that. You see, long ago, a young boy known as Sathya at home and Raju to his friends ran a school for illiterate adults in this rather remote village. Yes, our beloved Swami did just that, and the full details can be found in Summer Showers in Vrindavan 2000, the proceedings of the summer course held in the year mentioned. In brief, what happened was as follows. Swami gathered the young men and grown-up boys in Puttaparthi and ran an evening school for them, where, on an open plot made available by a kind gentleman who was the owner, furniture, the students placed a big stone, and that became the teacher's chair or Swami's seat. The students sat on the ground. By the way, though Swami was half their age, the students, in true Indian tradition, sat at the feet of the Guru. Blackboard? None. Slates? None. Then where did the teacher write and where did the students write? A small pile of sand was made before each student, and that was the slate. That is how Swami started his evening classes on adult literacy. Swami not only taught language and elementary arithmetic, but also gave some practical hints. He encouraged the students to grow bananas and papaya in their backyard and earn some money. With that, he made them buy slates and slate pencils. That is how progress was made. So, what does all this show? I think it shows many things. First, one must start with firm determination and one must not give up even before taking the first step. Next, one should not feel inhibited by the apparent absence of material resources. In all such cases, one must tap a bigger resource, namely the spirit within. Money never did great things. It was always the spirit of man that did it. Money does help, no doubt, but it alone is not sufficient. All the wealth in the world is absolutely useless if the spirit is wanting. And that, by the way, is today's situation. What else? 3 more lessons can be learnt. 1. Sathya was selfless and that is why he succeeded. 2. Sathya had a clear social objective, in this case adult literacy. 3. Where there is a will, there is a way. This last point, though well known, is almost always forgotten. Why? Because people feel intimidated by the effort needed when confronted with big tasks. Actually, people are ready to put in a tremendous amount of effort when some private end or glory is involved. But when it comes to service and sacrifice, people find it so difficult to invest time and effort. They just shrug their shoulders and say, no, it's just not possible. What they really mean is, why on earth should I? And what's there in it for me anyway? So it all comes down to self-interest. People would stubbornly refuse to accept my analysis, but alas, this is true. You don't have to take my word for it. Just look at Puttaparthi today. Ask old-timers what it was like even 30 years ago. In 1968, Hollywood director Arnold Schulman wrote, Puttaparthi is 165 kilometers from Bangalore and 10 minutes past the Stone Age. Just compare that with what the situation is today. The next time you come, just walk across the river to Karnataka Nagepalli and see for yourself its condition. It is still more or less where it was a long time ago. How did this hamlet called Puttaparthi develop so much compared to its neighbor? Did the government pump in a lot of money? Who provided the initiative and incentive? Who has provided employment to thousands of villagers here? Is it the government? Few realize that in this country where there's a lot of talk about rural development and all that, Swami has single-handedly done wonders in this area without moving an inch out of this place. Does this not teach some lessons? Let me now turn to some of the comments made and some of the doubts expressed during the business sessions of the seminar of Vice-Chacellors. Here's a sample 1. The Sai Institute is an isolated experiment in a controlled and sheltered environment. It is difficult to extend this to the real world. 2. You are dealing with maybe about 1,000 or 2,000 students here. In the real world out there, there are 9 million students. That makes the difference. 3. How do we know that once they graduate, Sai students retain the values they are exposed to here? 4. A mindset is already created by the time a student enters college. Therefore, there is perhaps no point in imparting value education at the tertiary or university stage. It's too late already. I don't wish to say that everyone was negative or everything said by the visitors was negative. On the contrary, everyone wholeheartedly accepted that what they saw here was just amazing and beyond description. Yet, many seem to regard it as something like a freak and perhaps a nice exhibit. That was about it. Let us examine all these viewpoints. Let us say there is a patient who is critically ill. The patient is admitted to a hospital. Can the duty doctor say, look, this patient won't survive, no chance. So, let me go and watch the World Cup finals, which is on TV right now. If the doctor said that, would we not accuse him of callous indifference and a massive dereliction of duty? Would we not accuse him of not being true to the oath he has taken? How can educationists say a similar thing? That is what came to my mind when I sat there and heard some of these comments. To be fair, most of these vice-chancellors have a rough time back in their respective universities. Unfortunately, that is the life at present. So, if many of them had a sinking feeling, one should not be surprised. But then, just as one expects the doctor to have total faith and commitment till the end, a teacher or an educationist cannot abandon the system giving one excuse or the other, because ultimately it is the educational system that shapes future students and future citizens. When the cells of the body become bad, they destroy the body. So also, if the students are rotten, the nation would be totally ruined. That is why Swami says, good teachers plus good students equals a great nation. Our starting point must then be one of faith, abundant faith. One must fight the evil that plagues the system with the grim determination of the kind with which millions fought to save Stalingrad during the Second World War. I maintain it is that important because right now there are 9 million young people in the age group that is supposed to receive education. With such a large number involved, can we say that character development is not important? Can we allow the ills that plague our system to infect these future citizens? I hope I have made my point. Let me now come to how all this problem started. Few seem to realize today that if we go back, say, 60 or 70 years, our schools and colleges were in pretty good shape as far as the character of our students was concerned. In fact, the world over, schools stress discipline and character development. The freedom struggle in India threw up many great patriots who sacrificed much, often their lives, and they all came from our schools. Gandhi did, just to give one spectacular example. Something then went wrong sometime later, as has happened in fact throughout the world. Everywhere, two factors have played a key role in the sudden collapse of values in schools and colleges. The first factor was that parents and teachers began to neglect character development for their own reasons. Parents excused themselves saying they had no time, while teachers said it was none of their business. And to make matters worse, education establishments turned almost en masse to making money by fair means or foul, often the latter. The second and more serious factor is the incredibly negative influence of the media, by which I mean the whole lot: newspapers, magazines, cinema, TV, and now the internet. And media has been aided profusely by money power. Rich people saw that the media offered an easy means of becoming richer. That's one of the reasons why the media became powerful. It had the backing of money power. That is how the rapid slide started after the Second World War, and in India in particular, values that were held dear and sacred for thousands of years got almost totally eclipsed in a few short decades. So what happened as a result of all this? Many things, but I shall mention just a few. Firstly, since selfishness had been glorified, people had no compunction in being utterly selfish. Next, the emphasis shifted dramatically from a sense of responsibility to rights, more rights and still more rights. I am interested only in my rights, to hell with duties. That became the swan song, more or less. Since character had been dispensed with, people did not have any qualms in cheating. Small-time crooks did it covertly, but the big corporations made sure that the laws were modified to help them fleece left and right. That is how extortion has been legitimized. I have discussed all this earlier and will not tax you once more with those gory details. But this I do wish to state. First, the hallmark of an educated man is that he must be a conscience keeper of society. He must have the moral courage to speak out boldly when wrong is done. If he remains silent when morality is being thrown to the winds by society, then he is committing a heinous crime. If you recall, in the Mahabharata, this precisely is what the great and wise Bhishma and other elders did at a crucial moment. They failed to speak out when they ought to have. Today, that sort of thing is happening regularly. That is because educational establishments have stopped serving society and are looking instead to making money. Things have gone too far. Today, if one looks at crime statistics, it would be found that over 80% of the crime is being committed by educated people. These are what the law describes as crimes. Take, for example, computer viruses. Are they being spread by illiterate villagers or by educated people? Or consider the huge corporate frauds that we have been hearing about so much. Who is behind them? All this is regular crime. But where big corporations are concerned, corporations concerned with arms, diamonds, drugs, tobacco, etc., crimes against humanity are totally whitewashed as normal commercial practices. Should we allow such things to continue? After the recent spate of corporate frauds in America, leading business schools there began to worry as they were getting a bad reputation. They then did a lot of brainstorming and came to the conclusion that if they added, along with the regular courses, a special course dealing with values in business and commerce, then all would be fine. I was absolutely astonished with this act of self-deception. I mean, how on earth could one teach aggressive competition in the other classes and say it would all get cancelled by one more course on values? It's like scotch taping one more course and hoping that all would be okay. Gandhi said that life is one whole and one can't be good in one part and bad in another. Swami goes further and says that truth is one and cannot be factorized. It is time to wake up. If society has degenerated and lost its moral moorings, we cannot do a tinkering job and say, I will be moral in that department, but in this one, I will do what is advantageous to me. Moral considerations need not enter here. Doctors these days are increasingly talking of holistic medicine. That concept applies even more to morality. We can have only total morality and nothing else. To talk of compartmentalized morality is sheer delusion. There's one more point, and this is an important one that I would like to make before winding up. You see, deep within, a large number of young people seek idealism. I'm not making this up. When I was young, a very large number of students who came from middle and lower middle classes were strongly attracted to Marxism. Why? Because Marxism seemed to offer a clean and ideal blueprint for solving society's problems. We in our generation were not alone. Earlier, Jawaharlal Nehru was drawn to Marxism. And you would be surprised, so was late Mr. V.K. Narasimhan, whom many of you would fondly remember as the former editor of Sanatan Sarathi. Much before that, a young man named Narendranath was experiencing tremendous mental agitation and seeking some kind of an ideal path, and that was what drew him to Ramakrishna Parahamsa. And it is this same young man who later became Swami Vivekananda. Some time ago, we broadcast a talk by Mr. Narsimurthy, warden of Brindavan campus. In that talk, he not only describes how he came to Swami, but also describes in detail the mental anguish that he felt prior to that, the search for idealism once again. Incidentally, we have reproduced that talk in textual form in 2 recent issues of Heart to Heart. I strongly suggest you go back to those to understand better what I am talking about. Now, what has all this stuff got to do with education? I mean, what is the connection between idealism and education? Simply this. Universities and institutions that offer higher education must strike this chord in the youth. These young people are all bursting at the seam with a tremendous amount of creative energy. That energy, or Shakti, if I might refer to it that way, must be canalized along the proper path. This is the main responsibility of schools and colleges today. And this responsibility just cannot be dismissed, as many educators are trying to do. No matter how difficult it is their duty. Just go back to young Sathya in 1935 or so. He gave proper orientation to the youth of Puttaparthi. This was an extraordinary service because in those highly deprived conditions, these young men could easily have turned into violent and notorious rowdies and caused a lot of havoc in the village. In fact, the growth of fundamentalism and terrorism in recent times, including in India, is the direct result of disillusionment. This is true the world over. Wise men have from time to time sought to divert the enormous reserve of youth energy along proper channels. President Kennedy did it via the Peace Corps. Jayaprakash Narayan did it in India via his social service movement, and so did many others. Some, like Acharya Vinoba Bhave, even managed to tame dacoits. And now Swami is doing that in his own unique style. On October 20th this year, there was a function in Prashanthi Nilayam. October 20, you will recall, is the anniversary of the declaration of the Avatarhood by our beloved Swami. This year, on that day, 8,000 young men from all over Andhra congregated in Puttaparthi. Why were they here? They were here to give a report to Swami on the village service work they had been doing throughout the year in a large number of villages spread all over the state of Andhra Pradesh. How come these young men started doing such service, village service? They had become inspired by watching the students of Swami's Institute do Grama Seva for 10 days every year. By the way, please look up our issues of Heart to Heart. In that, we have been running a serial on Grama Seva. That too will give you an idea of how to canalize the energy of youth to constructive activities. I think the events of 20th October speak for themselves and give us the lesson we need. To cut a long story short, and using the American idiom, I might say that the events of 10/20 show the way not only for India but for the entire world. One does not have to spend billions of dollars to fight terrorism. All that one has to do is to absorb the lesson taught by 10/20. Paradise was lost when our educational establishment switched over from character development to money making. Paradise will be regained when we revert back to character building, and that is the essence of 10/20. In short, I submit that the answer to 9/11 is 10/20, and Prashanthi Nilayam provides the proof, if any proof is indeed needed. Think about it. Thank you, and Jai Sai Ram.